In today's video, we're telling the story of the anime film Kodomomuke. The movie is set in a world where supernatural creatures live among humans. It begins with a title card showing the dates from March 26th to April 7th. Before introducing the main character, Koyomi Araragi, we first see Koyomi walking around, breathing heavily, with sharp fangs visible among his teeth. He finds a door, opens it slowly, and steps outside onto a balcony. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he notices the area swarming with crows. He descends a staircase, watching the crows, which seem to stare back at him. As he continues walking, the clouds part and the sun shines bright. The sunlight hits Koyomi, and his entire body bursts into flames. He runs around, screaming, frightening the crows away before he falls off the building. We flash back to March 25th, where Koyomi is walking down the street. He stops when a girl appears in front of him, her skirt blowing up in the wind, exposing her underwear. Awkwardness ensues between them, especially after a car crashes nearby. Koyomi stares at the girl, but she approaches him and comments on how inconvenient skirts can be. As he tries to walk away, she chases after him, surprising him by calling him by name. She introduces herself as Tsubasa Hanakawa and explains that they attend the same school. Tsubasa begins analyzing the meaning of Koyomi's name, which impresses him. He recalls how she achieved perfect scores in every subject except one during their final exams in their second year. She teases him, suggesting he might be stalking her, but he quickly defends himself, explaining that he learned this information from a friend. Koyomi then admits that he doesn't have friends, emphasizing that Tsubasa is well known enough that even someone like him would know about her. She doesn't seem amused and tells him to stop. As they walk together, Tsubasa suddenly asks Koyomi if he believes in vampires. She shares an urban legend about a vampire in their town, warning him that it's unsafe to walk the streets alone at night. According to the rumor, the vampire has blonde hair and eyes that can freeze anyone in place. Koyomi is skeptical and tries to rationalize the story, but Tsubasa shrugs it off, saying it's likely just a rumor. Still, she admits she'd love to meet the vampire, given her interest in supernatural creatures. Apologizing for her rambling, Tsubasa then asks why Koyomi doesn't have friends. He replies that friendships make people vulnerable, and he doesn't want to be affected by others' problems. She argues that friends can bring happiness, but Koyomi says their happiness would only make him jealous. As they reach a crossroads, Tsubasa mentions she's heading to the library and invites him along. Koyomi declines, saying he's not a diligent student and just hopes to graduate. Before leaving, Tsubasa takes Koyomi's phone, giving him her number and email address. After Tsubasa leaves, Koyomi watches her disappear around the corner, feeling confused. He continues walking and passes a car crash, feeling a burst of happiness that prompts him to throw his bag into the air. When he gets home, he finds himself alone and starts having inappropriate thoughts about Tsubasa. Feeling uncomfortable, he leaves the house and heads to a store, where he buys an adult magazine. He looks at Tsubasa's contact info again before sighing and putting his phone away. Suddenly, all the city lights go out, startling Koyomi. He finds himself near a subway station, where he notices blood splatters leading underground. He follows the trail just as the lights turn back on. At the end of the path, he sees a large blood stain on a wall, and further ahead, he finds a woman lying in a pool of blood. The woman demands his help, and as Koyomi approaches, he notices her limbs have been severed. Horrified, he drops her and shakily tries to dial for help on his phone. The woman, however, tells him she doesn't need an ambulance. She needs his blood. Koyomi realizes that this must be the vampire from the rumor Tsubasa mentioned. The woman introduces herself as Kiss Shot Acerola Orion Heart Underblade and confirms she's a vampire. She explains that she needs blood to regenerate, but because she's lost so much already, she requires all of Koyomi's blood to survive. Koyomi panics, backing away in fear. Kiss Shot begins to break down, flailing on the ground and splattering blood everywhere as she begs for his help. She crawls towards him, crying blood, and apologizes profusely. Overwhelmed, Koyomi runs up the stairs, but soon stops, feeling conflicted. He tries to convince himself that he doesn't need to help her, but eventually returns to where Kissshot lies. He lifts her up, and believing he'll die from helping her, decides to give her all of his blood. Kissshot bites into his neck, thanking him as he loses consciousness. Later, Koyomi wakes up, thinking the entire ordeal was a dream, until he notices a young blonde child beside him. He tries to wake her, but she refuses. As he steps outside, the events from the introduction scene play out. Koyomi catches fire in the sunlight. The child, who is also on fire, drags him back inside, and they both stop burning. She reveals that she's Kissshot and explains that she turned Koyomi into a vampire, making him immortal. Koyomi is only the second person she's ever turned. When Koyomi tries to ask her more questions, she insists he calls her by her full title, Heart Under Blade. He refuses, saying the name is too long. Koyomi also asks why she now has the body of a child, instead of her mature form. In the scene that follows, Koyomi learns more about his new situation. Kissshot is visibly offended when he questions her current childlike form, explaining that Koyomi's blood wasn't enough for her to regain her original form, so she took on a smaller one to conserve energy. She steps on his foot and walks away, annoyed. Kissshot then asks if he now understands everything, and Koyomi nods. She orders him to pat her head as a sign of obedience, which he reluctantly does, finding it strangely adorable. Kissshot reveals that turning Koyomi into a vampire wasn't intentional. Anyone bitten by a vampire becomes one. Nevertheless, she's grateful it happened because she has a task for him. When Koyomi asks if he can become human again, she assures him it's possible, but only after she regains her full power. She explains that the vampire hunters who cut off her limbs are the key to restoring her strength, and instructs Koyomi to retrieve her missing limbs from the 3 hunters. Only then can she turn him back into a human. Later that night, Koyomi encounters the vampire hunters. They communicate in garbled voices, making it hard to understand their intentions. Suddenly, a mysterious figure leaps from a nearby building and intervenes, stopping the hunters just as they charge at Koyomi. After the altercation, the stranger takes Koyomi to safety. Though Koyomi tries to thank him, the man brushes it off, revealing that he already knows Koyomi's name, which surprises him. The man then explains that he was the one who brought Kissshot to the abandoned cram school. Koyomi, confused, asks for his name, but the man remains silent. They return to the cram school and regroup in a lecture hall, where Kissshot greets Koyomi and remarks that the man looks familiar. As Koyomi and Kissshot discuss recent events, the man sits quietly in the back. Koyomi expresses his concerns about facing the vampire hunters, knowing they were strong enough to defeat Kissshot at her full power. He also worries they might find the hiding place. The man reassures him, saying he's drawn a protective boundary around the building to keep them safe. Finally, the man introduces himself as Mime Oshino and explains that, unlike the vampire hunters, he doesn't perform exorcisms. Instead, he prefers to act as a mediator between humans and supernatural creatures. Oddities, as he calls them. Mime offers to mediate between Koyomi, Kissshot, and the vampire hunters, but only if Koyomi agrees to pay him 2 million yen. Kissshot asks for details, but Mime is vague, simply promising to help by negotiating with the hunters and separating them to recover her limbs. Convinced, Kissshot instructs Koyomi to secure the money so Mime can assist them. Though hesitant, knowing he doesn't have that much money, Koyomi eventually agrees. The movie ends with Mime sarcastically thanking them, leaving us on a cliffhanger. This was the first film in a trilogy, so if you enjoyed this recap, stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with the anime movie you'd like me to recap next.